Welcome to the broadcast, everybody. I come to you absolutely horrified, sickened, disgusted at the response of Buckingham Palace. And I've got to tell you, actually quite fearful. I'm actually quite worried. And I might have some things to reconsider about my attitude to the monarchy. If this sort of thing continues, this sort of behaviour, with the disgusting treatment of Lady Susan Hussey. I am absolutely appalled, truly. And I can understand those of you who are concerned about it. But just for a few moments respite from that, just for a little bit of light relief before I go into it, I wanted to share this piece of footage with you of the King when he was visiting with the Jewish community recently, and happy Hanukkah to those of you that will be celebrating over the coming days. I hope you have a really lovely time, and Charles certainly had a lovely time, but we'll be talking more about his visit there later. But I just wanted to show you this bit of footage because this rather endearing young lady, who was absolutely gorgeous, I have to say, but a little bit strange, behaved quite strangely. Never seen anything quite like it, and even the Charles looked rather shocked, although he was enjoying the moment. But she was very struck by him. Just if you're wondering if Harry and Meghan have managed to turn every person of colour in the world against the King and Queen, well, no, quite the opposite, in fact, because many adore him. So I thought that was worth sharing because it gave me a bit of a giggle and lifted my spirits. And, it should serve as a reminder, even though it should be so obvious, but not everybody in the world out there goes along with this woke ideology or critical race theory or a particular narrow view of the world and what conversations are allowed to be had. And this is incredibly sinister. If you're not aware, I will read out Buckingham Palace's statement. A meeting took place this morning, 16th of December, at Buckingham Palace between Ms. Ngozi Fulani, founder of Sister Space, and Lady Susan Hussey to address the incident that took place at a palace reception last month. At this meeting, filled with warmth and understanding, Lady Susan offered her sincere apologies for the comments that were made and the distress they caused to Ms. Fulani. Lady Susan has pledged to deepen her awareness of the sensitivities involved and is grateful for the opportunity to learn more about the issues in this area. Miss Fulani, who has unfairly received the most appalling torrent of abuse on social media and elsewhere, has accepted this apology and appreciates that no malice was intended. Not from Susan Hussey, no. From you? Both Miss Fulani and Lady Susan ask now that they be left in peace to rebuild their lives in the wake of an immensely distressing period for them both, caused by Ngozi Fulani and her ridiculous, false accusations. They hope that their example shows a path to resolution can be found with kindness, cooperation and the condemnation of discrimination wherever it takes root. Well, there wasn't any discrimination. No, there wasn't any discrimination in that conversation. It is the wish of both parties that at the end of the UN's 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, attention can now return to the important work of Sister Space in supporting women affected by domestic abuse. Well, I've seen many people speak very highly of Sister Space, and if they've helped people, which I'm sure they have, in many ways, then that can only be a good thing. But there is a flip side to the coin, and I'm very curious to see what other important work Sister Space might have been doing when the accountants take a look over their books and all the grants that they've received. That'll probably be swept under the carpet too, if there's anything sinister involved, and I'm not claiming that there is, but there are fingers being pointed in the press and on social media, and there is a call for them to be held up to greater inspection. But I'm not casting any aspersions. We'll see what happens there. Their Majesties the King and Queen Consort and other members of the royal family have been kept fully informed and are pleased that both parties have reached this welcome outcome. And you look at that photograph, you see the charming face of Lady Susan Hussey, the Queen's bestie. Isn't she charming? Look at that gaze, which has no resentment towards Ngozi Fulani, speaks only of the good character we've heard so much about. And you contrast it with the sly, mischievous grin of Ngozi Fulani. And it's a bitter pill to swallow, it really is, that Hussey has been made, well, not made because she's doing it willingly. It only speaks to her goodness. It only speaks to her charitable nature I just hope that she hasn't been deeply convinced that she is some sort of evil, racist, bigoted woman, because she is not, and people are being coaxed and forced into self-flagellation. And as I've said before, I didn't overhear the conversation, so perhaps she spoke clumsily, even though most rational people would take her generation into consideration and her wealth of experience. But even if she was clumsy, for Ngozi Fulani to complain about the abuse she's been getting, and I do not condone abuse of any kind, and I don't even look on Twitter unless I'm researching some kind of story, so I do not approve of anyone going after her with abuse of any kind. No, I don't. But she threw herself out there. She threw Lady S.H. under the bus and named her, and think of all the abuse that she's been getting as well, I'm glad to say, as much support. So, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. I've already had lots of comments about this. I just got to read out a couple of them. One here from Nedra. Read somewhere that Ngozi had met Lady H and the latter apologised to her. Is this true? Well, yes, it's true. If so, really bad show. Yes, I agree. If not, thank goodness. From a Sri Lankan, Kenyan, British-educated Canadian. Thank you for that. Loopy Lou says, I heard she apologised. There's pictures of them together smiling. God bless Lady Hussey, who is a far bigger person than I would have been. Yes, she is a tower. She is a tower of goodness and goodwill. The kind of goodness that Ngozi Fulani will never capture, will never emulate, no matter how much she does a Meghan and Harry and raises themselves up on their own pedestal. Loads of suckers are falling for it. Loads of people are deifying these kinds. But lots of us ain't, are we, my fruits? We're not falling for it. Alice Springs says, karma will come for Marlene, also known as Ngozi, and it will be well deserved. I sent Lady Susan Hussey a letter of support, which I hope will give her a little comfort after the disgraceful treatment she has been subjected to. And yes, letters, letters, letters. Do not be afraid to send letters to Susan Hussey, care of Buckingham Palace. Do not be afraid to write to Buckingham Palace or any of the official royal residences. You can find all the addresses online. You can write to the King. You can write to Prince William to show your objection, if you so wish. And I urge you, if you do so, don't write 1,000,000 pages. Don't fill one entire page. You will grab more attention if you keep it succinct in style. Keep it short and sweet. Make your feelings known, because I can tell you, when they open a letter and it's a great big diatribe full of too much emotion, they're more likely to just put it aside and discard it and think, oh, I'll read that later. Make your point, do it diligently, and I would wager many more of us support her than those that don't. And that's what's sickening about this whole affair, that a small minority are being pandered to. And why do I think Buckingham Palace have taken this action? Why do I think that they are being so reactionary? I think so much of it has to do with Harry and Meghan, as we all know, and a lot of it has to do with the reaction to the Jamaica tour, where the fingers were really burnt when it came to William and Catherine, only because mischief makers are seeking out these kind of images to exploit them and exploit people's emotions and make some kind of erroneous, crafty statement. And I think it was only in the wake of that William, as principal of his household, pulled them all together and tightened up procedures and made sure there was procedures in place. She resigned super quick, and there were statements out within a few hours, even though William was away in Boston. And you'd think that might be enough to begin with, but I still see people online complaining that, oh, it took a couple of weeks for this meeting to happen. They got there eventually. But I mean, what more do you want, for goodness sake? And despite this report that it was a warm and welcoming meeting, I see no further statement from Ngozi suggesting that Susan Hussey be reinstated, to say that, yes, we had a warm and welcoming meeting, and we have great understanding. There's no reason for her to step down. Not that she needs her blessing anyway. We don't need Fulani's blessing. But she should be coming forward to say this woman should not be losing her job if she so wants to remain at the palace. But for those of you that have written to me and are disgusted by this and that are reconsidering your affection for the monarchy, I do not blame you. One bit. I really do not blame you. And, this is a warning shot to the palaces, because for the millions and millions of us from all over the globe that support you and see through this kind of mischief. People of all colours, and you've been seeing all the commentators. They ain't all just white, they ain't all just from the patriarchy. They're from all over the land and the Commonwealth. Just as they have detractors, they have many admirers, and they have many people who support Lady Susan Hussey and have been speaking out about this absolute nonsense. And it's so sickening seeing them scuttle around like little workarounds. Oh, more diversity training, more inclusion. I mean, sheesh Louise, Jesus Christ. Pandering to these crazy ideologies, these stunt queens, these mischief makers are sickening. Race baiting it is, race baiting. This diversity training is creating a fleet of robots. And it seems to be creating a forum of people with absolutely no diversity of opinion. No diversity of opinion. There might be diversity of a million backgrounds, but absolutely no diversity in viewpoint and thinking. In case you're wondering, it's being reported that the Harkles will be invited to the coronation. It seems that the king is to be inspired by the Queen's unwavering faith and her Christian attitude and her refusal to engage in drama. And one rumour that's been doing the rounds about Harry's book is that he reveals that he lost his virginity to an older woman. A cougar of sorts. And one of the rumours that was rather strong was that woman was Liz Hurley, of all people. Well, she's rebuffed the rumour officially to the Saturday Times. She said, "Not me, not guilty." So I'm sure that puts some images in your head that you don't want. But no, she was not the older woman. I wonder who it was. Wouldn't it be interesting if it was Lady Susan Hussey? Hussey by name, Hussey by nature. It's a great word, isn't it? Hussey. Hussey. I absolutely love being called a hussy. The press have also been making a fuss over Camilla's new equerry. Johnny Thompson is for Charles and Camilla has Ollie Plunkett. I mentioned him the other day, but I think I put a photograph of someone else beside Camilla. It was hard to discern which was which, but some photographs have emerged of Ollie Plunkett. Actually, I shared some from the carol service yesterday, and he seems to be attracting some fans and admirers from all over the place. It's amazing what a uniform can do, isn't it, my dear? To elevate the ordinary, a uniform comes in handy. Princess Catherine's lovable rogue of an uncle, Uncle Gary Goldsmith, is at it again, and this time he's been expressing his displeasure for the Netflix extravaganza, suggesting that Meghan's jealous of Catherine because she makes it look effortless. And as usual, he's full of praise for Catherine in this interview, and he speaks a lot of her warmth and how tactile she is in contrast to the image that they seemed to put out of her, being rather cold and frigid around people and uptight. Well, he says that she's very warm. He also speaks of her tomboy spirit because she can look so very feminine a lot of the time. She's dressed up to the nines, but she's got a real tomboy spirit at heart, and as he says in the interview, she loves nothing better than really being in her welly boots running around with the children, and the rest of it she does a lot for our pleasure rather than hers, really. And I think that's why she holds a lot of appeal for men and women, you know. Women really love Catherine as well, and women don't always love other women, especially ones that are very beautiful, but she doesn't have that sort of intimidating vanity that goes with her beauty, does she? And I think that is because deep down in her spirit she's a bit of a tomboy, that it just enjoys the simple outdoor life, and she's not vainglorious in the manner of others. And so back to Hanukkah and celebrations for the Jewish part of our population. And aside from being approached on bended knee by fans in the kitchen, the King visited JW3, a community centre that acts as a hub for the arts, culture, social action and learning in North London. And it's open to those of all faiths and all cultures and all types, but of course with a focus on the Jewish population. And he attended a pre-Hanukkah reception for Holocaust survivors who regularly visit the centre for its social and education programmes. There are some absolutely stunning images and some gorgeous video captured of the King dancing the hora with Anne Frank's stepsister, Anne Frank's 93-year-old stepsister Ava Schloss. And the welcome he got was absolutely rapturous. It was a very, very warm gathering. And it is so obvious now that we're a few months into his reign that it is a warmer approach than the Queen's, isn't it? So much more warm, cosy and tactile. And we all loved her style, her rather remote style and her own version of warmth, and wouldn't change a bit of it. But it is nice to see a different style, isn't it? It is just interesting to see the difference, and good to see Charles doing it his way. As long as it doesn't go too far down the woke way. That is what we really don't want, and what I think will be very damaging for the legacy of the royal family long term, because it is playing into the hands of mischief makers, and they will never please these people who ultimately want to tear them down. So don't start trying to give them an inch, or they will want miles and miles and miles, the whole Windsor Mile, my dear, until that castle is razed to the ground, and this time there'll be no repairs. He was presented with a menorah, and the inscription said, "One person's candle provides the light to many." And I have noticed one thing about Charles lately, and that is the length of his eyebrows. They're getting out of control, my lovers. And I don't expect every gentleman to take an interest in the length of his eyebrows, but they are getting... I used to have a science teacher with eyebrows like that, and they jettisons out about half a yard in front of his face. Everybody used to call him the BFG, actually. He looked like that Roald Dahl character. But I don't think it would harm him just to take 20 seconds to give them a little trim. I certainly don't want him plucking away at them. That's not necessary, but just a little trim, a little bit of grooming to keep oneself fresh would go in order, wouldn't it? Come on, Camilla. Come on, Camilla. Get him at it. This was a lovely tradition, and I learned about it myself. I didn't know about this, but the king will receive a cutting from a Glastonbury Holy Thorn to grace his Christmas dinner table. And this tradition of a cutting sent to the monarch dates back to James I's reign in the early 17th century. And it's going to be sent off to Sandringham for the Christmas dinner. And the tradition is that the eldest child from St John's Infant School at the moment cuts the thorn. And this time it fell to 7-year-old Eris that you see here. So that's a nice honour for Eris. And actually the Queen always made sure that she popped it in the centre of the dining table while they're passing around the roast spuds. That must be quite a banquet there at Sandringham, mustn't it? Love to be a fly on the wall. Love to be invited, if anyone's watching. It'd be really nice to fill a couple of empty spaces with my peach. But this Glastonbury Holy Thorn is unusual because, unlike normal hawthorn trees, it flowers twice a year, once in winter and once in spring. And the legend is that the first such thorn sprang from the staff of Joseph of Arimathea, the saint who buried Jesus when he visited Glastonbury and thrust his staff into the Weariall Hill. And actually I found it a little bit distressing reading about this story, because that beautiful tree that you see there, it was attacked by vandals, this holy tree with the holy thorn, attacked by vandals with a chainsaw in 2010, which caused a lot of widespread grief, unsurprisingly, this sacred tree. You know, why... What is in these people's heads? You know, zombie, as the Cranberries said. What is in these people's minds? You know, I mean, to do it to any tree. These living, growing, gorgeous things. I'm friends with a lot of trees, and they speak and they talk and they listen as well, you know. Got some wonderful relationships with trees, and including some hawthorns, and an ancient hawthorn actually on Hampstead Heath. I digress, don't I? But I love trees. To do it to any tree, but a sacred one at that. I mean, I ask you. This was 2010, and it happened again after they replaced the tree. It happened again a few years later, and I think they almost gave up with it. But thankfully, some monks had taken some cuttings of it, so it was able to be regrown, and I think this version grows in this infant primary school. I'm not quite sure, but it's nice that the tradition still exists, isn't it? Ritual is important. The Queen attended a star-studded glitzy-ritzy escapade in Mayfair at Murano's. It was a Christmas lunch, and it was all lovely, lovely, lovely time. And she looked gorgeous in a green midi dress, a navy cape jacket, and suede knee-highs. And some of her friends were there, including Dame Maggie Smith, the lovely Maggie Smith, Maureen Lipman, another dame, and cheeky old Piers Morgan was there. I wonder how Harry and Meghan will feel about that. And of course, you know he's got a great affection for Camilla, especially. He loves Camilla, and she's rather fond of Piers too. They had a few cosy catch-ups together in the past. And I'm quite jealous of Piers Morgan because he owns I think it was a watercolour. It was a painting that she did anyway for something, and he bid for it at auction a few years ago, and apparently he hangs it in his guest bathroom or above the loo. And as you can imagine, that would have gone up rather a lot in price as she's ascended to be queen. So he was there, and you could see him leaving with one of the goodie bags that they give out as well. And also there was Chris Evans. Tracy Emin was there as well. Tracy Emin, Tess Daly, Hugh Bonneville, Jeremy Clarkson, and there was a kiss for her son, Tommy Parker Bowles. So there we are, my lovers. That's all I got for you today. And I'm sure, like many of you, I really thought that I was on target to be so organised for this Christmas. I started doing all the shopping a couple of months ago, getting things in, getting cards ready, this, that, and the 9th. But it happens, doesn't it? All of a sudden you find yourself almost on the eve of Christmas Eve, and there's still stuff to do and things to buy. It's a complete and utter headache, isn't it? You got to do it. It's just the thought of facing all those shops with all those muggles everywhere, isn't it? Get out of the way, and it's too late to order stuff online. But anyway, I'm sure you can sympathise with me, and I certainly have compassion with you. So whatever you're celebrating, do it with a sense of humour and a little hint of naughtiness, and you'll be absolutely fine, won't you, my dear? Let's try and not take everything so seriously, including the very serious case of Ngozi Fulani and Lady Susan Hussey. And Buckingham Palace better start watching its step, and better start watching exactly who it's defending and who it's defaming. It better start watching itself and whether it is a monarchy or the thought police. We already have a police force, and even they have been infested by an element of wokeness that some of us don't appreciate. And just in case there's any confusion, the woke attitudes of yore, and I'm talking back decades ago when the word sprang up, was a healthy worldview, and a want and a need for the world to be more compassionate towards others. It was a healthy word with healthy connotations of things that were going in the right direction and went in the right direction. But that word has been hijacked, and the meaning of it has changed over the last few years. And that is why many of us disparage it, because it's not what it was initially intended for. And I don't want a woke monarchy. Thank you very much. It's enough with every other institution in the land and beyond falling to that sort of ideology. The monarchy was one of the last bastions of decency, good character and good faith. And it still is, but do not set another foot on that slippery slope. I implore you, Buckingham Palace, Kensington Palace, Clarence House. We must make our feelings known. Thank you very much for your company. Thank you most sincerely to those of you that have sent me a little tip for a Christmas tipple. It is greatly appreciated and fills me with a lot of cheer. So I thank you for that. And I thank those of you who just simply watch, enjoy, and engage with the broadcast. You are appreciated, and I will speak to you soon. Take care and toodle pip.